But first, we're going to start with, as I mentioned, Todd Madison of Transparent California, Lance. So here that comes now. All right, with me now is Todd Madison of Transparent California. And Todd, what's your exact title over at Transparent California? And what is Transparent California for those few among our listeners who do not know?
Yes, for the 10 million people listening to you, I am the director of research at Transparent California. What that means is that I am in charge of the effort to collect data from our public agencies every year. We try to collect 4,700 public agency data sets every year. We're probably lucky to get to about 3,000. And I'm the guy that manages that process. So what Transparent California is, we're the state's largest database of public pay information. The state had a problem in the early 2000s or the early 2010s with the city of Bell. People may remember that. The city manager and the city council were ratcheting each other's pay up until the guy was making $800,000 a year. As a result of that, the state put some laws in place that require disclosure of public employee pay. So Transparent California was started at that point to illuminate that, to shed some light on who is being paid what in our state. And that's what Transparent California does right now. We have about 38 million records online of public pay and pension database going back a decade.
So by way of background and full disclosure, California Policy Center worked with Nevada Policy Research Institute. I almost called it National Public Radio, NPRI, to put this together long before I arrived on the scene. I think it went up first in the work started in about 2012, and I believe it first went up in about 2014. Does that sound right, roughly?
Yeah, the first data we have available, we have limited 2011 data, but 2012 is really the date that you start seeing, massive amounts of records flow in. We get about 2.5 million records a year on there.
Yeah. Well, and just I also continuing with my full disclosure, NPRI now runs the entire database, and it is, for my money, I think probably not only the best database of public employee pay and benefits in California, but probably in the United States. I mean, it is a remarkably detailed data set. And when you look at this stuff, what's amazing about it is that we have down to the level of people's names. We know, so that, if you're a city council member, a school board official, you're sitting up there on the dais and, Joe Smith comes up to talk about the poor pay of people like him. You can go look up Joe right there on the dais and find out, oh, the guy made $250,000 last year as a firefighter, or $350,000 as a janitor in the Bay Area rapid transit system. And so this stuff becomes really, I think, critical for public understanding, for the understanding of public officials. The media love Transparent California, frequently cited there. So good for you. I have buried our lead, however, and I want to talk about this. There was a recent study. Again, we deal with this perennial problem, but you and I will talk about the perennial problem. And that is that a lefty kind of economics group came out, a policy research group called Economic Policy Institute, and they came out with a new study, I guess just 8 weeks ago perhaps, saying that, wow, teachers are just severely underpaid. And I guess this surprised you, Todd Madison, since you get to look at teacher pay very closely. Tell us about the study.
Well, it's always surprising. So I see the EPI study. They've been doing it for probably 5 or 6 years now. I see it every year. Every year I see how they claim that teacher compensation in relation to comparably educated residents is going down and down and down. Their yardstick is they would like teachers to be paid as much as they would be paid if they used their education doing something else. It seems relatively fair. It seems like an objective thing. If you come out of school with a certain degree and you make a certain amount in private industry, we shouldn't be shorting teachers as a result of that. But their data always shows that teachers are behind on that by 5, 10, 15, I think this year 16%. It's a huge negative there. Now, one of the things I always look at, though, is this is a national study. The number that you see in the headlines is national. And I look at California. I'm not too concerned about what teachers get paid in Missouri. It may very well be tremendously underpaid, but I have 2.5 million records from 2022 or 2021 at this point. So I look at that and I say, okay, how does that compare to what we have? So that's my point in this.
Yeah, their methodology is, I think it's, if I remember correctly, this is Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they rely primarily on self-disclosures, let's say. They call people up on the telephone. They say, hey, can you talk to us? We're checking out how much people make. So it depends upon the self-reporting of an individual contacted by phone by the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Yeah, it's a survey. It's not actual data. And as you say, it's self-reported. So, I don't know how much we can trust that. Plus, it's a sampling. Usually I think that they get about 300,000-ish responses nationwide, which means if California is the proportionate to that, they're getting maybe 30,000 in California. We have 300,000 actual pay records derived from the actual district's payroll from the years obtained with a legal public records request. So we assume that the district is not lying to us because it's legal, and we assume that the data must be accurate. So that's what we use.
So So they show teachers lagging about 16%. What do you show?
Well, we show that 2021 is the last year that we have actual full data. We have for 2022, we've got a pretty good sample size. We've got 137,000 records for teachers right now. So we've got what is that, about 4 or 5 times what the Bureau of Statistics has. With that, we show the median pay of a teacher in California is $102,636. Median total compensation, $134,437.
And compensation is different from salary, I guess you're saying there, those two numbers.
Yeah, so pay is everything they get in a paycheck. And then compensation includes what they call non-paycheck compensation, which is, say, the value of your healthcare plan, your retirement contributions, all that stuff.
So all in, we're talking about 134 on average, or median, I guess you said, 134,000. Yeah.
I use median because the U.S. Census Bureau uses median. So I want to compare apples to apples when I look at that. And that's typically what I do with it. I look at U.S. Census Bureau data to find that same number for comparably educated California residents. That's what I look at.
So Todd, this controversy about how much teachers are paid comes up every single time there's a teacher strike, every time. Mm-hmm. The first thing they say is, we're just not paid enough. And then they include the words dignity and respect, which seem to be the buzzwords on the progressive left, that if you just tie things to dignity and respect, then you open up your checkbook and you fill in the dollar amount for whatever they say is necessary for something called dignity and respect. But we, at CPC, when there's a strike, we go to you guys at Transparent California. We take a look at what teachers are actually making there. And we have to also, I think you'll agree, that the database is so complete that it includes people who work part-time or stopped working after a year. Mm-hmm. So frequently you'll get this median or average dragged down by the very, very low. The person like me who taught in a public high school for a period of, I think, 3 months or something at one period. But I'm in there, or I used to be anyway. I don't know if I've fallen off at this point.
No, we keep data forever.
Oh, that's so sweet. I see my mom in there. So I think that, what we're able to do then is come back and talk to the media who are reporting that, teachers are underpaid and they heard it right directly from the source, the union. We can go in and say, no, here's what teachers are actually making. The teacher's response when they are confronted with information from Transparent California, I would just say all public employees, cops, firefighters, DMV workers who work with SEIU, you name it, any public employee in California who's on Transparent California, as soon as you pull the covers on them and reveal that they actually make a lot more than they're saying, their next response, Todd, is typically, well, the cost of living in California is so high that you really don't understand how hard it is to make it here on this meager income of a median $134,000. What's the response to that?
Well, the response I give is it's hard for everyone. I mean, the fundamental issue is not, can I live on what I make? The fundamental issue is, how does what I make relate to what I could make if I did something else? That's what determines the labor market. It's what Will Swaim makes is not dependent on what he wants to make. It's dependent on how much the CPC can afford to pay him and what he could make if he went and did this doing something else. That's how it works. In comparison, the median for a comparably educated California resident in 2022 is $92,000. So just on pay alone, a teacher is making about $8,000 a year more than they would make using their education doing anything else that they could possibly do in the state of California. So is that enough to live in the state? I don't know, but it is $8,000 more than the people paying taxes to support them are making. And that doesn't count the cost of retirement benefits. which we know is exceptionally plush in the state.
Yeah. So, what do you do, just to get deep into the stats weeds here in your methodology? What do you do about the fact that teachers make this cash over a period of about 9 months rather than the full 12 months? Do you calculate for that problem?
No, for my purpose, teachers are salaried employees. They don't punch a clock. So as a salaried employee, if I make $100,000 for getting a job done, I make that money whether I work 2 minutes or I work 7 days a week. So I don't really care like how much they work. I mean, it's fundamentally an issue for many people because the average teacher contract is for 1,200 or for 1,300 hours a year, which is about 600 or 700 hours less than full time for anybody else. So some people have a problem with that, but I really don't because I'm just looking at what the job they're doing and how much they're getting paid for doing
That's a
that.
very libertarian, very free market perspective, Todd. I love that. I do point out that a lot of teachers claim they must work during summers and holidays and weekends and nights because they're just not making enough. I had a fun interaction. I don't know that I've told it on the show before, but I think you may appreciate it. I was invited to debate the head of a local teachers union here in Orange County. And she came prepared to blow me up by pointing out that they could not fill a position for oh my gosh, totally blanking on it all of a sudden, an AP, a chemistry teacher, because they were only offering $52,000 per year for a person who would have to have, a really pretty certifiable and hardcore background. I am not an AP chemistry guy. So she came, loaded for bear and presented this as if, see there. And anticipating the move, I took a look at Transparent California and found that this particular district had no fewer than 12 pre-K teachers earning over $120,000 per year. And I pointed out that this was a union contract. This was a collectively bargained contract by the union that insisted that people be paid according to how many years of service they'd put in, not what the market required of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like an advanced degree in chemistry, let's say. So sure, you guys could just revise the contract to let it depend on market availability of talent. And this chemistry guy might make $500,000 per year, given his or her background. But they don't like this. So, it's fascinating. The collective bargaining agreements frequently are the agreements by which the teachers are actually punished. That, no matter how hard they work, no matter how well they do in the classroom, no matter the scarcity of their particular talents, chemistry, calculus, whatever, they're going to be put up next to a finger painter with 20 years in the chair, and they're going to make less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, really. I've talked about this frequently during salary negotiations. If you look at the average salary schedule, the bump up every year tends to be about the same, usually 2 to 3% every year. But when you get to the highest end, that say 3% is $3,000. The lowest end, of course, is $1,500. So if they just revise their own schedule, which, as you point out, the union determines, the union writes that schedule. If they just revise their schedule to bump up the lowest pay levels and phased out the increase at the higher level, as we all hear in private industry, you've reached the top of your scale occasionally. They could easily solve this problem. The problem is their own making. They could solve it anytime they wanted to.
I would be remiss if I didn't get into one last question. I know the answer, but Todd, for our friends who've made it through a stats study here and methodology about payroll data and that sort of thing, Bureau of Labor Statistics, I want to know, were you born in California? And if not, where are you from?
I'm from Hibbing, Minnesota, which is people may remember as the hometown of Bob Dylan. My mother grew up right across the street from him. So I moved out here to go to UCLA in college and haven't really gone back outside of vacations, of course.
Well, we will forgive you the UCLA, and we will praise you for having been born across your mom living across the street from Dylan, and you have an artifact from that time. Is that correct?
I do. I have Bob Dylan's, I think, freshman year yearbook from Hibbing High in Hibbing, Minnesota, which is worth an amazing amount of money. I just found out. So, but we're not selling it. So.
Do you have are you a Dylan fan?
I'm not a huge Dylan fan. I've only got like 10 or 15 of his albums, maybe.
Do you have a favorite?
I like Blood on the Tracks. Blood on the Tracks is one of my favorite. Some of his older stuff though too, Highway 61, things like that are just awesome as well.
Yeah, just a really remarkable artist to follow. I hated when it first came out because, as I've told you, I was a punk rocker and I was particularly parochial about that. If you fell outside the circle of trust, if you were a Dylan or a Grateful Dead or, God forbid, somebody from the 50s doing doo-wop, I had no time for you. But I came to really admire Slow Train. I think that's what it was called, right? I'm totally
Yeah.
suddenly, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just found it this weird. I mean, for him and for
Mhm.
his personal trajectory, what an amazing sort of side road trip down a country road into something I would not have anticipated for a young Jewish, well, at that point, no longer young, but a Jewish kid who grew up in a mining town.
Oh yeah. Now, listen, have you listened to Neighborhood Bully? It's particularly
No.
relevant. So, Neighborhood Bully, I forget which album it's on, but it's his song about Israel. It's his song about, the trials and tribulations of Israel and what they've gone through. So it's
Wow. Okay. Well,
pretty
we'll put that
relevant.
in the show notes along with your contact info. Todd, thanks so much for making the time this early on a Thursday. Really grateful for it. And I really look forward to getting to know you better, especially given your idiosyncratic musical tastes and the fact that you went to UCLA.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem, no problem. And everybody needs to go out and let their neighbors know about Transparent California. Get
Thank
up and
you.
speak at school board meetings, council meetings. Let them know you're watching.
I love that idea. Yeah, this is a message that we're going to have to spread virally because though the media do cite Transparent California quite frequently, not enough people know that it exists. When I will tell public officials to this day, I'll be in some off the track kind of place and I'll tell the city council there, you do know you can find out about all this information all over the state, and they're just shocked that Transparent California exists.
Well, if anybody wants to know, you can actually sponsor an agency. You can go online, you can click the button, you can send us $25, and we will actually notify you when new data is posted, and we prioritize that collection. So out of the 3,000 agencies we're going to collect this year, the sponsored agencies come first. So if you have a particular interest in your city, your state, your school district, your water district, your cemetery district, whatever is important to you, click that button, and we'll let you know when new data comes up.
I'm ashamed to ask this question. I work for the California Policy Center. Cemetery districts.
There are cemetery districts. Yes, there are. There are about 3,000 what they call special districts in California, some of which have like 5 employees, and they're all over the place.
But mostly underground. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Todd Madison. Transparent California. All of the contact information's there in the show notes. Thank you, Todd.
sure. Thank you, Will. Sure. Thank you, Will. Sure. Thank you, Will.